Don't touch him! Nia's voice cracked as she lunged forward, trying to block the flight attendant's hand from grabbing her little brother. I said move back to coach, now! The woman's voice was flat, cold, like she'd already made up her mind. Micah stood frozen in the plush leather seat, his small fists clenched, eyes wide with shame and disbelief. A man 2 rows up leaned into the aisle again, like he was confirming the obvious. Told you, he muttered, not even bothering to whisper. Those seats don't belong to them. The flight attendant turned and smiled, tight, rehearsed. And then she said it. You don't belong here, sweetie. 5 minutes later, this flight never left the ground, and neither did 124 others, across 8 airports, because of these 2 kids. Tell us where you're watching from. Now rewind. Let's go back, 20 minutes earlier. Micah Grant was 9 years old and had never flown first class before, and judging by how often he pressed his nose against the window, you could tell he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Look, Nia, that's our luggage. See the green tag? Uncle Ray said to watch for it. Nia, 12 going on 30, barely looked up from her iPad. I see it. Don't smudge the glass. Micah wiped the window with the sleeve of his NASA hoodie. Do you think we'll get warm cookies? Or just peanuts? Depends, she said flatly, on if they think we're supposed to be here. He didn't get it, not really. But she did. It wasn't the first time. The first-class cabin wasn't full, but it was full enough. Mostly older white folks. Business jackets, laptop bags, eyes that darted sideways every time Micah giggled too loud. A tall, lean man in a charcoal suit across the aisle gave them a long look, then leaned toward the attendant, whispered, nodded in their direction. The flight attendant, tight bun, bright red lipstick, navy blazer, name tag, L. Jennings, walked over with a smile so forced it almost cracked. Hi there, she said, crouching slightly. Can I see your boarding passes, sweethearts? Nia tensed. We already showed them at the gate, twice. I understand, honey. I just need to double check. You know, sometimes the system messes up. Nia slowly reached into her backpack and handed over both tickets. The woman scanned them, raised an eyebrow. First class. Huh. Micah smiled. Yup. Our uncle booked him. He works in... Are your parents on board? Nia answered. No, we're flying alone. Our uncle's picking us up in D.C. Another pause. Jennings stood upright, not smiling now. All right, I'll be right back. They watched her disappear into the galley. Micah leaned over. Did we do something wrong? No, Nia said, gripping her armrest. But they're about to pretend we did. 3 minutes passed. Then came another attendant, older man, silver hair, gentle tone. Douglas, senior flight staff, his badge read. He knelt beside them. Hey kids, so, there's been a little confusion. We think these seats may have been reassigned due to a system error. We'll need you to move to economy just until we sort things out, okay? Nia's lips tightened. No, sir. We're supposed to be here. Our uncle... I understand, but let's not make this difficult. We'll be pushing back in 5, and the captain's asked to resolve any seating issues quickly. Micah looked like he was trying not to cry. You don't believe us, he whispered. Douglas sighed. Please grab your things. Before Nia could argue, someone else jumped in. The woman in 2A, white, designer sunglasses, gold purse with a Hermes H voice like nails on a wine glass. Can we get on with it? She snapped. Eki snapped. It's a short flight, and I'd rather not spend it with this drama. Douglas looked between her and the kids and made a choice. He reached for Micah's backpack. That's when Nia stood up. We'll go, she said, jaw clenched. They moved down the aisle in silence. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. Micah dragging his feet, trying to blink away the tears. Behind them, someone laughed softly. And then came that sentence, just loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. You don't belong here, sweetie. Back in row 32, by the bathroom and broken seatback screens, they sat in silence. Micah didn't say a word. just stared down at the tray table like it had betrayed him. Naya pulled out her phone, texted one word, "Now." She hit send. 3 miles away, in a government building with no windows and 4 levels of security, a man in his early 50s sat in front of 6 monitors. 5 minutes later, this flight never left the ground, and neither did 124 others, across 8 airports, because of these 2 kids. Tell us where you're watching from. Now rewind. Let's go back, 20 minutes earlier. Micah Grant was 9 years old and had never flown first class before, and judging by how often he pressed his nose against the window, you could tell he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. "Look, Nia, that's our luggage. See the green tag? Uncle Ray said to watch for it." Naya, 12 going on 30, barely looked up from her iPad. "I see it. Don't smudge the glass." Micah wiped the window with the sleeve of his NASA hoodie. "Do you think we'll get warm cookies or just peanuts?" "Depends," she said flatly, "on if they think we're supposed to be here." He didn't get it. Not really. But she did. It wasn't the first time. The first-class cabin wasn't full, but it was full enough. Mostly older white folks, business jackets, laptop bags, eyes that darted sideways every time Micah giggled too loud. A tall, lean man in a charcoal suit across the aisle gave them a long look, then leaned toward the attendant, whispered, nodded in their direction. The flight attendant, tight bun, bright red lipstick, navy blazer, name tag, L. Jennings, walked over with a smile so forced it almost cracked. "Hi there," she said, crouching slightly. "Can I see your boarding passes, sweethearts?" Naya tensed. "We already showed them at the gate, twice." "I understand, honey. I just need to double check. You know, sometimes the system messes up." Nia slowly reached into her backpack and handed over both tickets. The woman scanned them, raised an eyebrow. "First class. Huh." Micah smiled. "Yep, our uncle booked him. He works in—" "Are your parents on board?" Naya answered. "No, we're flying alone. Our uncle's picking us up in D.C. Another pause. Jennings stood upright, not smiling now. "All right, I'll be right back." They watched her disappear into the galley. Micah leaned over. "Did we do something wrong?" "No," Naya said, gripping her armrest. "But they're about to pretend we did." 3 minutes passed. Then came another attendant. Older man, silver hair, gentle tone. "Douglas, senior flight staff," his badge read. He knelt beside them. "Hey kids, so, there's been a little confusion. We think these seats may have been reassigned due to a system error. We'll need you to move to economy just until we sort things out, okay?" Naya's lips tightened. "No, sir. We're supposed to be here." "Our uncle. I understand. But let's not make this difficult. We'll be pushing back in 5, and the captain's asked to resolve any seating issues quickly." Micah looked like he was trying not to cry. "You don't believe us," he whispered. Douglas sighed. "Please grab your things." Before Nia could argue, someone else jumped in. The woman in 2A, white, designer sunglasses, gold purse with the Hermes H voice like nails on a wine glass. "Can we get on with it?" she snapped. "It's a short flight and I'd rather not spend it with this drama." Douglas looked between her and the kids and made a choice. He reached for Micah's backpack. That's when Nia stood up. "We'll go," she said, jaw clenched. They moved down the aisle in silence. Every step felt like walking through wet cement, Micah dragging his feet trying to blink away the tears. Behind them, someone laughed softly. And then came that sentence, just loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "You don't belong here, sweetie." Back in row 32, by the bathroom and broken seatback screens, they sat in silence. Micah didn't say a word, just stared down at the tray table like it had betrayed him. Naya pulled out her phone, texted one word, "Now." She hit send. 3 miles away, in a government building with no windows and 4 levels of security, a man in his early 50s sat in front of 6 monitors. His name, Raymond Pierce. Title: Regional Director, FAA Northeastern Division. His job: oversee air ethics, compliance protocols, and PEI. But that's not what made him dangerous. Raymond was also the original architect of the Passenger Ethics Index, a real-time system that rates airline behavior and determines access to high-volume air corridors. What no one outside FAA knew was Raymond also held manual override clearance on the Black Flag Protocol. Only 3 people in the country could trigger it. Raymond was one. His phone buzzed. One word. From his niece. Now, he didn't blink. He opened the terminal, typed 6 letters. BF lock. The screen turned red. Back on the plane, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been informed of a hold on our flight plan. We're temporarily grounded due to airspace activity in the region. We'll update you shortly. The groans began. The complaints. The muttered curses. But the kids in row 32 just sat still. Micah finally spoke. Do you think she knew who we were? Naya shook her head. She didn't care. 6 minutes later, JFK halted 47 flights. Raleigh-Durham stopped 18. LaGuardia froze 22. Newark, Philly, Baltimore, all locked. $920 million in delayed clearances. 3 airlines downgraded. 1 man's silent trigger, because 2 kids were told they didn't belong on a seat they paid for. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't scream. They didn't fight. But they belonged. And now the whole industry would know it. The echo of his boots against the marble floor was the only sound in the hallway. Raymond Pierce didn't rush. He never did. Even now, walking through the executive tier of the FAA's Northeastern Command Complex, past floor-to-ceiling windows, reinforced doors, and walls humming with encrypted frequencies, his steps were measured. Purposeful. He pushed through the final biometric door and entered a narrow room with 4 rows of monitors, each manned by a tech or a junior ethics analyst. They all stood when he entered. Status, he said, voice low. A young man in glasses turned from the front row. Black flag trigger is active, sir. JFK, LGA, EWR, BWI, and RDU are all holding. 74 total flights grounded across 6 corridors. Estimated disruption value is nearing $680 million, climbing fast. Raymond nodded. Run PEI cross-check. The analyst hesitated. Sir, that might spike public alerts. I know, Raymond replied calmly. Do it. 2 keystrokes later, a red banner blinked across the top of the command display. Ethics deviation alert. Multiple violations detected. Flight 478. Raymond stepped forward, eyes scanning the report. At the center of the screen was a live feed of Flight 478, still idle at the gate. Zoomed in, 2 kids, row 32, quiet, watching. 20 years earlier, the blueprint. People always assumed Raymond Pierce came from legacy aviation. They were wrong. He came from Harlem. Son of a seamstress and a sanitation worker, Raymond had never seen a cockpit until he was 19. He joined the Air Force as a radar technician. Quiet, brilliant, observant. By 26, he was recruited into the National Defense Ethics Group, a division no one talked about, buried in the Pentagon's basement. That's where he first designed SkyGrid, a real-time ethics triggering protocol layered over federal airspace. It started as a side project. Then it became the backbone of every flight corridor clearance across the East Coast. SkyGrid didn't just move planes. It protected people, passengers, people like Naya and Micah. Back to present. Raymond turned from the monitors and addressed his deputy, a sharp woman in her 40s named Ayanna Torres. Confirm me something, he said. Did Flight 478 report a mechanical issue? No, sir. All clear. Pilot intoxicated? Nope. Threat to national airspace? Only threat I see, she said, tapping the screen, is a grown woman laying hands on a child and a senior crew approving it. Raymond exhaled slowly. Then we escalate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a black key fob with a fingerprint scanner, inserted it into a slot beside the command panel. The room dimmed slightly as the override interface opened. Authorize Ethics Cascade, Level 2. Reason: discriminatory passenger handling. Minor passengers, verified by PEI. He paused, looked again at the live feed of the two kids. Still not crying, still not angry, just quiet. Then he pressed enter. Across the system, 7 minutes later, in Atlanta, a flight operations manager at Sky North Airlines froze as a flashing code interrupted her dispatch board. Restricted route code 902, corridor suspension issued. In Miami, a senior ESG fund manager got a push alert. Ethics score downgrade. Sky North, status non-compliant. 280 million in ESG-aligned financing frozen pending audit. In Dallas, a booking system auto-flags Flight 478 as ethically uncertified, prompting 4 travel platforms to begin delisting the airline for the next 24 hours. And in Boston, an FAA liaison picked up the phone to call the CEO of Sky North. "Sir, you're going to want to sit down." Back at the command floor, Ayanna turned from her terminal. Update. PEI auto-flagged 8 discriminatory behavior markers. We now have cause to trigger full review on all 3 routes operated by that crew. Raymond nodded. What about the passenger who initiated the complaint? Ayanna pulled up the facial recognition match. Blair Wyndham, real estate heiress, director-level donor to multiple travel consortiums. Raymond's mouth tightened. Of course she is. He tapped the console again. Add her to the Fair Sky Ledger audit list. A nearby analyst turned. That'll flag her to 3 investment boards. Raymond looked at him. Then maybe next time she'll think before humiliating a child. Private moment. Raymond's office. The storm was underway. Everything was moving. But Raymond had stopped. He closed the door behind him and sat down. On his desk, a photo of his sister, Nia, and Micah's mother, taken 7 years ago. Smiling, natural, full of life. She died in childbirth. Twins. Only Micah survived. Raymond had stepped in, raised them like his own, balanced his high-pressure FAA position with bedtime stories, field trips, and scraped knees. But today was different. Because today, they were old enough to face the world on their own, and they faced cruelty. And the system tried to bury it. But it didn't know who their uncle was. Final moves. Silent but deadly. Raymond opened his terminal one last time. Typed, "Suspend Sky North route certification, corridors 3A, 3B, 4D. Reason, violation of passenger integrity protocol." He confirmed. Then he picked up his desk phone and called the FAA chair. "This is Pierce. Ethics Cascade initiated. I'll brief Senate oversight directly." On the other end, silence. Then, "Understood." He hung up. Meanwhile, on Flight 478, the pilot got a direct cabin call. "Captain, FAA Command just suspended our routing slot. JFK is denying clearance to taxi." "What? Since when?" "5 minutes ago. We're told to hold indefinitely." The captain stood. "I'll speak to ground." But before he could leave the cockpit, 2 federal ethics officers appeared at the gate, stepped on board, and requested the crew's presence. Off the plane. Nia watched it happen. Micah sat quietly, still holding the ticket Uncle Ray had printed for him. A little bent, but still valid. He didn't look scared anymore. He looked ready. The plane door swung open, and just like that, everything changed. 2 uniformed federal officers stepped aboard Flight 478 with silent precision. No dramatic entrance, no announcements. Just quiet authority. They moved like they'd done this before, because they had. The captain, mid-sentence in the cockpit, paused as he saw them. "Captain Rodriguez," one of them said. "We need to speak with your crew. All of them. Now." His face tightened. "Is there a threat?" The officer raised a small tablet, already displaying FAA emergency compliance orders. "You've been flagged under subsection 14C of the Passenger Ethics Protocol. Orders are clear." The captain blinked. "Crew, disembark." Flight attendant L. Jennings froze mid-walk in the galley. Her hand clutched a tray of still-wrapped cookies. She looked to Douglas, the older senior attendant, who was already white as a sheet. "We're being pulled." "Not just pulled," he whispered. "We're being removed." And sure enough, 2 minutes later, the entire cabin crew was escorted off the aircraft. A murmur began in first class. Passengers craned their necks, eyes darting between the kids in the back and the uniforms at the front. The woman in 2A, the one with the Hermes purse, started to fume. "What is going on?" she demanded, standing. No one answered her. A new voice crackled through the cabin. "This is ground control. Due to unanticipated flight coordination issues, we're delaying pushback. Flight 478 is currently on indefinite hold." Indefinite. That word hung like a storm cloud. Micah leaned forward in his seat, eyes wide. "Did Uncle Ray do something?" Naya didn't speak. She just nodded once, very slowly. Then she glanced down at her phone. No new messages. He didn't need to text. He already moved. Back on the tarmac, the captain was pacing beside the terminal glass, arms crossed. He tapped his headset. "Dispatch, this is 478. We've been ordered off the bird. Confirming hold code BFL2 active?" A cold voice replied. "Confirmed, Captain. System override. FAA Ethics Command triggered. You're grounded until further notice." "Who's behind this?" Name came attached to the file. A pause. "Raymond Pierce." The captain stopped walking. No one said anything else. Inside the terminal, the crew sat with their bags at their feet. Jennings scrolled through her phone, desperate to find an explanation. All her screens were flashing ethics alerts, passenger mistreatment, minor involvement, system downgrade. She leaned back, her bun no longer perfect, her lipstick faded. This can't be real. But Douglas knew better. It's real. And if that man's who I think he is, we're not just facing suspension. We're about to become the face of federal hearings. Jennings scoffed. Over 2 kids? No, he said slowly. Over who those kids belong to. While the crew stewed in silence, the ripple was spreading. By hour's end, 3 major airlines had initiated internal audits. 12 executives in New York, Boston, and Chicago were locked in emergency calls with FAA liaisons. A 4th ESG lender issued a warning freeze on $240 million in aviation bonds connected to Sky North Airlines. News hadn't gone public yet, but the system was already bleeding. Inside the plane, tension tightened like a rope. Micah clutched the armrest. "They're not coming back, are they?" Nia shook her head. "No." And then the new flight crew arrived. All business, no chatter. 2 new attendants, 1 new senior lead, and a young female co-pilot trailing behind them, headset still on. The lead attendant, a tall black woman in her 50s with a silver name tag, C. Rollins, stepped quietly to row 32. She crouched. "Hi," she said softly. "You two okay?" Micah blinked, unsure. Nia simply nodded. Rollins smiled gently. "My name's Carla. I'm going to be with you for the rest of this flight. We'll get you there safe, and no one's going to touch either of you again." Then she added something else, quietly. "I worked with your uncle back in '09. I know what he built." Naya's eyes widened just a little. "You do?" Rollins winked. "Yeah, baby girl. And this whole industry's about to remember." She stood, turned to the cabin, and for the first time in the last 45 minutes, someone made an announcement that actually mattered. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said firmly, "this flight has experienced an ethics protocol disruption. The crew has been replaced. We will resume preparations as soon as clearance is reissued. And then, this airline is under formal review." The silence after that was heavy, but also satisfying. Back in 2A, the woman with the purse started to gather her things. "This is ridiculous. I'm not flying with—" "Ma'am," Rollins cut in calmly. "You're welcome to disembark. However, I should warn you, passenger audits are active. Every interaction on this aircraft is being recorded and uploaded to the PEI system." The woman's face drained. She sat back down. The kids didn't move. They didn't gloat. They didn't speak. They didn't have to. The system was now doing the talking. 20 minutes later, the plane was cleared. FAA reissued a temporary route. The new pilot nodded from the cockpit. Rollins passed by once more before takeoff and placed 2 small items on their tray tables. Hot cookies, still warm. "Courtesy of the new crew," she whispered. Micah beamed, and then he looked up and said something that caught even Naya off guard. "Do you think this means other kids like us won't get kicked out anymore?" Rollins paused. "That's the plan, sweetheart." The wheels lifted off the ground, and as they rose into the night sky, across 8 airports and 3 airline systems, a quiet tremor of reform had already begun. They thought 2 kids didn't belong. Turns out, they were the reason everything started to change. And the world? It was watching now. The airport cafe smelled like burnt espresso and bleach. Raymond Pierce barely noticed. He sat alone at a table by the window, one hand wrapped around a paper cup, the other scrolling through the live ethics dashboard glowing on his tablet. Green lines flickered, yellow zones blinked. But the red alerts, those stayed steady. 3 flagged airlines, 17 airport API suspensions, 124 delayed flights, and that was just the Northeast Corridor. His jaw clenched, not in pride, in control. "Sir," a quiet voice. He looked up. A young woman, no older than 30, approached nervously with a clipboard. Her blazer bore the Atlantic Vista Airlines logo. Her badge read, "Leah, Ethics Compliance Assistant." She didn't sit. "I was told to give this to you personally." Raymond took the envelope. Inside, a letter from the CEO of Atlantic Vista, requesting a private meeting, apologizing, explaining, pleading. He didn't read it twice. "I'm not meeting your CEO," he said calmly. "He'll meet the system." Leah's mouth opened slightly, but she said nothing. Her knuckles tightened around the clipboard before she backed away. Raymond turned his eyes back to the tarmac. Somewhere up there, Micah and Naya were flying. Safely now, but not quietly, because the system wasn't quiet anymore. Back at the FA Command Center, his override had triggered not just a local incident, but a cascading audit across multiple regional alliances. The Black Flag Protocol, his own creation, had been activated only twice before in 17 years. This was the 3rd. And this time, it wasn't being reversed. He tapped on a new tab labeled Ethics Audit, Passenger Event 478. Dozens of entries were pouring in, anonymous testimonials from passengers, flagged video clips from onboard recordings, 2 witness reports from other flight attendants who had stayed silent until now. One audio file played automatically. "Oh," she said, "you don't belong here," to the kids. It wasn't about a seat, it was about what they looked like. The voice was shaky, male, possibly a fellow first-class passenger. Raymond paused it mid-sentence. That was enough. The system was already moving faster than him. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic Vista headquarters in Atlanta, the executive floor was a war zone in heels and rolled-up sleeves. CEO Donovan West paced the glass conference room, cell phone glued to his ear, while his general counsel tapped furiously on a keyboard beside him. "She's not answering," he muttered. "FA Media's blacked us out." His VP of Communications looked up, pale. "Sir, it's not just FAA. ESG compliance froze our sustainability certification. That means no investor reports can go out this quarter." Donovan's brow twitched. "That's over $1 billion in exposure. 1.4 B, actually. And counting. He slammed his phone down. All of this over 2 kids in first class? A younger executive dared to speak. They're not just any kids. I don't care who they are, West barked. What I care about is our airline being labeled unethical in the middle of a green fund acquisition. The boardroom fell silent. He exhaled, stared out at the Atlanta skyline. Get me that man, Raymond Pierce. We find a way to undo this quietly. But it was already too late for quiet. That afternoon, CNN Business published a headline. FAA launches federal ethics review into Atlantic Vista incident. You don't belong here. Triggers system-wide fallout. 3 hours later, ABC News aired passenger interviews. One woman in first class, blonde, hesitant, looked into the camera. I heard her say it, the flight attendant, and I didn't say anything. I just looked away. Then the final blow came. A short clip from inside the aircraft surfaced on social media, recorded by a phone in coach class. It showed the moment the flight attendant pointed at Micah. They're not supposed to be in these seats. The words echoed, and America watched. By nightfall, hashtags were trending. First class, while black, #ethics over airlines, #they. Belong here. And buried under it all, a name kept reappearing. Raymond Pierce. But he didn't go on camera, He didn't give interviews. He just watched and waited. At home, he finally set the tablet down as the door opened. Naya and Micah burst in, backpacks slung, shoes half-tied, faces tired but alive with something new. Power. "Uncle Ray!" Micah ran to him. Nia stayed back, eyeing him carefully. Was that all you?" He smiled faintly. "No, that was the system doing what it was designed to do." "But you designed the system," she said. He nodded. "I did." They sat at the dinner table, and for a few long moments, no one said anything. The weight of the day hung over them like a thundercloud with no rain. Then Nia spoke again. "Do you think anything will actually change?" Raymond leaned back. "I think change happens when enough people stop waiting for permission to be outraged." Micah tilted his head. "What's that mean?" Raymond chuckled softly. "It means people saw what happened to you, and they didn't look away this time." Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Inside, a legacy flickered too. Raymond reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin silver case. Inside was his original draft of the Passenger Ethics Initiative, printed and bound from a time when no airline wanted it. Now, they had no choice. He slid the file across the table to Nia. "One day, this'll be yours to protect." She touched the cover gently. "I'm only 12. "You're 12 today," he said. "But justice doesn't wait on age." Micah peeked over her shoulder. "Does it have rules for flight attendants?" Raymond smiled. "It has rules for everyone." And just like that, the story that started in seat 32A wasn't just about what happened on a plane. It was about what would happen next. Because when you shake the system hard enough, the parts that fall out were never meant to be there. Micah didn't sleep that night. Not really. He lay on his side with his head half buried in the pillow, staring at the wall where the glow from the hallway spilled through a crack in the door. His sister Naya was across the room, curled up under the blanket, earbuds in. She always fell asleep listening to ocean sounds after a long day. But Micah's thoughts weren't quiet. He couldn't stop replaying it. The stewardess's hand on his shoulder, the words, "You don't belong here," the way people stared and didn't do a thing. And then, everything flipped. The plane didn't take off. The whole crew got replaced. Something big had happened, but he didn't fully understand how. "Uncle Ray did something," he whispered to himself. "Something way bigger than just calling the manager." He sat up and grabbed the tablet from the nightstand. FAA pages, news articles, hashtags. He didn't understand all of it, but he saw his face in some screenshots. And Naya's. Even that woman with the Hermes bag had become a meme now. Still, The question buzzed in his head. Was this what change looked like? At 7:42 a.m. downstairs in the kitchen, Raymond Pierce was making pancakes. His usual Saturday routine. Like the world hadn't shifted under their feet the night before. Micah sat down and watched him flip one clean over the pan. "Uncle Ray," he said carefully, "why didn't you say anything on the plane? When she touched me like that?" Raymond paused mid-motion. "Because I wanted the system to say it for me," he replied. Micah frowned. "But why not just yell? Or tell her off? You could have shut her down right there." Raymond set the spatula down and turned, leaning on the counter. "I could have, but then it would have been me versus her, and that's not what this is about." He walked over and placed a plate in front of Micah. "It's about making sure no one else ever has to wonder if they belong, because the whole system tells them. You do." Micah nodded slowly. That hit different. "So you built this thing? The system that grounded the plane?" Raymond smiled. "Built it, buried it in federal policy, and waited 10 years for someone to be stupid enough to trigger it publicly." Micah blinked. "And that was us?" "That was her," Raymond corrected, picking up the syrup bottle. "But we were the match." Back at Atlantic Vista headquarters, it was far from pancakes and syrup. A boardroom full of VPs and legal advisors sat in panicked silence. At the head of the table, Donovan West looked like a man who hadn't slept and hadn't had a coffee strong enough to fix it. "What's our play here?" he asked flatly. His general counsel, Marla, leaned forward. "You don't have one?" He raised a brow. She continued. "We are looking at 2 class action suits, one from passenger families, another being coordinated by the Equity Legal Fund. ESG pulled our ethical investment score overnight. FAA's Emergency Compliance Board already ruled preliminary fault. If this hits Senate review, we'll be required to adopt the Passenger Integrity Charter." Donovan rubbed his temples. "So we wait for the storm to pass?" "No," Marla said. "We get ahead of it by admitting fault and joining the reform voluntarily." Another exec scoffed. "You're saying we surrender?" "I'm saying," Marla said, "we survive." Across the city, journalists began referring to it as the grounding effect. 3 airlines had now suffered cascading fallout: canceled flights, frozen credit lines, and loss of cooperative privileges with ethics-compliant airports. New York, D.C., and Atlanta had issued formal requests for racial bias data audits on all airlines by the end of the quarter. And in the middle of it all, a quiet man in his 50s became the name whispered across every legal and compliance office in the country: Raymond Pierce. That afternoon, Nia and Micah were invited to a youth panel on aviation ethics. They wore pressed clothes and name badges and were ushered into a modern conference room lined with cameras. Nia clutched a printed speech in her hand, her fingers trembling. "I'm scared," she whispered. Micah elbowed her. "You saved me that day. You weren't scared then." She looked up. "That was different. That was just us." "This is still just us," Micah said. "Same 2 kids, just more people watching." When it was Nia's turn, she stepped up to the mic and took a deep breath. "My name is Nia Pierce. I'm 12 years old. I fly a lot because my uncle works in aviation. I always thought flying was special." She paused, swallowed. "But last week, someone told me I didn't belong, not because of what I did, but because of who I am, and because of how I look." The room fell still. "I want to live in a world where kids like me don't have to act perfect to be treated normal, where flying first class doesn't feel like breaking the rules just by sitting down." Micah beamed as she returned to her seat. A journalist snapped a photo. That photo would later appear on the FAA's official announcement the following Monday, with a headline that made every airline executive shiver: "The Passenger Integrity Charter, mandatory by Q4." That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the skyline, Raymond stood on the balcony with a glass of water in hand, watching 2 birds glide past. Nia stepped out beside him. "So Betsy, it's happening?" It started, he said. The hard part comes next. Audits, lawsuits, pushback. Naya nodded slowly. But it's working, right? Raymond looked at her, eyes sharp, proud. It's not just working, it's history. Micah joined them moments later, holding his tablet. Uncle Ray? Yeah? I found this old photo online. Is this you? He held up the screen. A black and white image of a young Raymond standing on the tarmac in the 90s, next to a protest sign that read, "Dignity can't be delayed." Raymond chuckled. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Were they ignoring you back then too? Worse, Raymond said. They laughed. Naya looked at the sign again. But now they're listening. Now, Raymond said. They don't have a choice. 2 days after the Passenger Integrity Charter was announced, Raymond Pierce walked into the Ethics Oversight Committee hearing with nothing but a small black folder and his signature calm. The room was packed. Cameras lined the rear wall. Airline lobbyists sat stiff in the back rows, flanked by assistants in dark suits. To the left, several senators whispered among themselves, flanked by legal aides. And directly across from Raymond, at the front of the semicircle, sat the woman who'd become the unofficial face of corporate pushback, Senator Lorraine Baird. Blonde, Texas drawl, sharp enough to cut marble. She leaned into her mic. Mr. Pierce, thank you for coming on such short notice. Raymond nodded. Of course. You've caused quite a storm this week, she said, flipping her notes, over what some people are calling a minor customer service mistake. There it was. The framing. Raymond didn't flinch. With respect, Senator, he said, voice low and steady. No system collapses because of a minor mistake. What happened to Micah and Naya wasn't isolated. It was symptomatic. Baird narrowed her eyes. But surely you understand the concern. Grounding 124 flights, freezing $800 million in credit chains, disrupting thousands of passengers, many of them low income, because of a seating disagreement? Raymond let the silence linger. Then, the system didn't ground flights. The system exposed why they should have been grounded a long time ago. The tension was palpable. From the public gallery, someone exhaled loudly, almost a laugh. Senator Baird tapped her pen, irritated. But don't you think your response was disproportionate? Raymond finally opened the black folder. Inside was a slim stack of sealed ethics complaints. Would you like to see how many children of color were removed from first-class cabins over the past 6 years with no justification? He asked. Because I have records. Not one, not 10, hundreds, and those are only the ones documented. He slid one page forward. It bore a timestamp, photo, and a note from a whistleblower at Skynova Airlines, dated 3 years prior. They didn't just remove us, he added. They trained for it. Gasps echoed in the chamber. Senator Baird blinked. The committee aides froze mid-keystroke. Raymond folded his hands. That's why I designed the Black Flag Protocol in the first place. Not to punish airlines, but to protect passengers when the mask comes off. Meanwhile, across social media, the clip went viral. Raymond Pierce. They trained for it. The quote was everywhere. CNN looped it. Reddit broke it down frame by frame. Activists reshared it with decades of supporting data. By nightfall, a second wave of public pressure surged. This time, not just at Atlantic Vista, but at all major domestic carriers. Dozens of whistleblowers came forward in the next 24 hours, from United Sky, Aero Blue, and even Horizon West. Leaked internal memos referenced things like profile consistency checks for priority class boarding, passenger presentation standard, Tier Y optics, soft reassignment protocol for high visibility discomfort, all thinly coded, all deeply racist. One training video even surfaced that showed a mock intervention where a flight attendant politely asked a black family to return to their assigned seats, even though the mock passengers held matching VIP tags. Within 36 hours, FAA regulators had no choice. A full ethics audit would begin across the top 10 U.S. airlines. International partners followed. And at the center of it all, Micah and Nia. Back at home, the twins were trying to live like things were normal. They couldn't. Not really. Micah had 3 new interview requests sitting in his inbox. A teacher at school asked if he wanted to speak at a Diversity Week assembly, and Nia's old debate coach texted her a link. Your speech is on the front page of the Atlantic. They weren't just kids anymore, they were symbols. It weighed heavy. That night, while Raymond was in D.C., the kids sat on the back porch, watching the neighbor's motion light blink every time a squirrel ran across the fence. I miss when it was just us and pancakes, Micah mumbled. Same, Nia said, hugging her knees. But maybe this was supposed to happen? Getting kicked out of a seat? No, she said. Getting seen. They didn't say much after that, just sat in silence while the wind moved the tree branches like quiet flags. The next morning, Raymond returned home, tired, but not defeated. He greeted them at the door with croissants, juice boxes, and something else, a crisp envelope addressed to the Pierce family. They opened it together. Inside, a letter from the FAA and DOT, hand-signed, thanking them, and confirming that, effective immediately, the Passenger Integrity Charter would become a permanent federal requirement for all U.S. airlines. Every airline that wished to continue flying into or out of the 27 major ethics-compliant airports, both domestic and international, would have to adopt a transparency compliance dashboard, real-time cabin ethics scanning, and quarterly diversity-based training for crew and executives alike. Micah looked up, stunned. They're really doing it? Raymond nodded. They're not doing it because they want to. They're doing it because they have to. Nia smiled for the first time that morning. Still counts. Later that week, Raymond sat for one final interview. Not with a major news outlet. With a high school journalism student named Layla Freeman, who requested 10 minutes for a school paper project called Power Without Permission. She asked one question. Mr. Pierce, what does justice look like to you? Raymond thought for a long time. Justice isn't loud, he finally said. It's not always dramatic. It doesn't slam the table. It sits in the back and rewrites the rules. Layla looked up, surprised. And did you? I just made sure the kids who come after my niece and nephew, he said, don't need to memorize what to say when someone questions their seat. He paused. They'll know the system already said it for them. The sun hadn't even fully risen when Raymond Pierce received the encrypted message. Subject: Confirmation. Black flag trigger accepted. Status: Ethics Protocol Enforcement. Underway. He didn't smile. Not yet. There were too many steps ahead. But across the country, inside cold server rooms and FAA offices running on double espresso, the dominoes had already started to fall. At 7:14 a.m. Eastern Time, a compliance alert went off at Atlantic Vista's HQ, then at United Sky, then Aero Blue. Within the hour, 14 airlines had been flagged by the Fairfly Ethics Ledger, a transparency system quietly connected to every major ethics-certified airport. Most execs didn't even know the system was live. They knew now. By 9:03 a.m., 5 ESG funds, representing over 1.1 billion in aviation exposure, froze all allocations to flagged airlines pending review. At 10:17 a.m., Denver, Miami, Boston, and Seattle airports suspended priority boarding access for all non-compliant carriers. By 11:02 a.m., 4 global booking platforms removed the Fast Lane Verified badge for any airline failing to report their real-time passenger equity index. And then, the real trigger fired. At 11:22 a.m., the FAA issued an emergency industry-wide directive. Effective immediately, no airline may operate out of any federal facility unless it meets the Equity Baseline Mandate, EBM, triggered under the Passenger Integrity Charter, Section 3B. Compliance must be validated within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in rote suspension, ESG decertification, and cross-border cooperation freeze. The industry didn't just pause, it seized. Back in New York, Raymond received a call. Not from the press, not from the FAA, from a CEO. Mr. Pierce, this is Jonathan Dreesen, CEO of Aero Blue International. We'd like to talk. Raymond didn't bother asking how they got his number. Go ahead, he said, calm as ever. We're ready to come to the table, Dreesen said. Our board's authorizing full adoption of your protocol. I'm not asking for adoption, Raymond replied. I'm asking for investment in change. You'll have it. Raymond paused. I'll need your general counsel on the call, and your head of HR. This won't be a PR fix. It won't be, Dreesen said. Not anymore. While the industry scrambled behind closed doors, Micah and Naya sat quietly at their kitchen table doing math homework. They didn't fully know what was unfolding outside, just glimpses. A push alert here, a headline on the counter screen. But they could feel it. Something big was happening. Uncle Ray, Naya asked gently, did we start this? Raymond looked over, thoughtful. No, this started a long time ago. But we helped, right? Micah said. Like, we lit the match? Raymond smiled. You reminded people that it could burn. By evening, the story had gone global. BBC, Al Jazeera, and NHK ran segments titled U.S. Airlines Face Civil Ethics Crisis. Major think tanks began publishing white papers titled The Pierce Effect and Decentralized Ethics in Passenger Systems. Journalists started tracking the exact moment the industry's shift occurred. 11:22 a.m., the black flag trigger. Only a few insiders knew the term. Fewer still knew that Raymond had waited nearly a decade to pull it. That night, Raymond stood in his home office, looking out the window at the quiet street below. A soft knock came at the door. It was Micah, holding a folder. We made something. Raymond raised a brow. You and Nia? Micah nodded and opened the folder to reveal a sketchbook with messy outlines, scribbled charts, and one bold title. Project Skyfair, a flight system by Kids for Kids. Raymond flipped through the pages. Equity rankings, feedback scores, safe zone seats, peer-to-peer reporting. It's not fancy, Micah said. But we thought, what if kids didn't have to wait for adults to fix it? Raymond closed the folder slowly. Then he knelt to Micah's level. Never let anyone tell you this isn't your space. Micah smiled shyly. We want to present it one day. Raymond placed a hand on his shoulder. You will. 3 days later, a quiet revolution became law. The FAA, in partnership with the Department of Transportation and the Office of Federal Passenger Ethics, rolled out the Pierce Protocol, a legally binding charter. Airlines were now required to report monthly passenger equity scores publicly, implement anonymous in-flight ethics scanning via non-intrusive AI, maintain whistleblower-protected ethics dashboards reviewed by an independent body, and most powerful of all, airlines that fell below the EBM, equity baseline mandate for 2 consecutive quarters, would lose access to all federally managed routes, funding, and insurance protections. The system Raymond built wasn't a policy, it was now infrastructure. Back at Atlantic Vista, Donovan West resigned. Not because he was forced to, but because the entire board turned against him once Raymond's system proved it had teeth. The press statement was clean, corporate, cold, but internally, chaos. 2 executives from 3 different airlines called it a corporate reset, a generational reckoning. Within a week, 7 major airline CEOs assigned the Ethical Skies Compact, committing to the Passenger Integrity Charter, public audits, and formal restitution funds for prior mistreatment. And in Harlem, on a quiet Sunday morning, Naya stood beside Micah in front of a classroom of 3rd graders, their old elementary school. A teacher asked, "What's the most important thing you've learned this year?" Naya answered without hesitation. "That even when someone says you don't belong," Micah finished it, "you can still own the sky." It had been exactly 1 week since the black flag trigger rippled through the aviation industry, and yet, Raymond Pierce still hadn't sat still for more than 10 minutes. Not because of chaos, because of change. A kind of quiet whirlwind had taken over his life. Calls from senators, ethics consultants, investor groups asking how to restructure their ESG frameworks. The White House even sent a discreet request for a closed-door policy session. But none of that felt more important than the 2 names still written on the whiteboard in his office: Micah, Naya. That morning, Raymond took a different route on his walk. No suit, no assistant. Just a coffee in one hand and a manila folder under his arm. He was heading to an old friend's apartment in Brooklyn. Dr. Harlan Quinn, once a civil rights lawyer, now a quietly powerful ethics architect who'd spent decades helping corporations pretend they cared, until one too many pretends broke his spine. Harlan opened the door in sweats and a baseball cap. "Well, look who finally decided to call back." Raymond gave a half smile. "I needed to talk to someone who's been on the other side of this." They sat on the balcony. 2 old soldiers from the same moral war. Harlan thumbed through the documents in the folder. "You know what this is, right?" he said, tapping the last page. Raymond nodded. "The beginning of a long, expensive storm." "No," Harlan said. "It's proof we've outgrown patchwork." Across the country, in San Diego, a very different meeting was taking place. A closed-door emergency session with 4 airline CEOs and their boards. They weren't angry. They were scared. "Gentlemen," said Marla Windsor, CEO of Velocity Air, "this is no longer about public relations. This is a federal compliance model. We missed the next benchmark, and we're out of every major coastal airport." Her CFO cleared his throat. "Our stock's already dipped 12%. "And if we push back?" one board member asked. Marla stared at him. "You'll be the face of every kid who got kicked off a plane for smiling too loud." No one spoke after that. They all knew. It was over. The era of hiding behind standard policy had expired. Meanwhile, Micah and Nia were at the community center, seated in the back of a town hall hosted by Councilwoman Rivera. The topic? Ethics beyond airports, how local systems reflect national failures. Micah kept leaning forward every few minutes, elbowing Naya. "Did you hear that? She said, 'The Pierce Protocol.'" Naya rolled her eyes. "Yes, I'm here too, genius." During the Q&A, a woman stood and asked, "What do we tell our kids the next time someone tells them to leave a space they earned?" Councilwoman Rivera didn't hesitate. "We tell them, if someone says you don't belong, look them in the eye and say, 'My name's on the protocol now.'" The room clapped. Micah beamed. That line would end up going viral the next morning. Back at home that evening, Raymond sat across from the twins at the dinner table. Micah was drawing logos on a notepad. Nia was scrolling on her tablet, quietly fielding comments from classmates, journalists, and strangers. "I think I want to study ethics law," she said suddenly. Raymond looked up. "You sure?" "No," she smiled. "But it feels like the first time it's even an option." He nodded, slowly. "And you, Micah?" Micah shrugged. "Still figuring it out, but I know one thing." Raymond raised a brow. "What's that?" Micah looked serious for a second. "I want to make systems, not just fix them after they break." The next day, Raymond boarded a flight. First time since the incident. Not because he had to, because it mattered. He sat in 2A, quiet, watching. Notepad open on his lap. He was no longer just an executive. He was an observer of systems. Systems he'd just rewired. The flight attendant approached him before takeoff, kind, polite, and more aware than anyone Raymond had ever seen in that uniform. "Mr. Pierce," she said softly, "just wanted to say thank you. I used to be afraid to speak up about things I saw. Now, we're trained to speak first." He gave a quiet nod. "And to listen second." She smiled. "Always." Mid-flight, He got a message on his secure line. From FAA Ethics Advisory Board. Subject, Pierce Protocol Expansion. Action, Approval for International Charter Alignment. Raymond stared at the message for a long second. It had begun. What started as a personal act of protection had become global policy. That night, back in Harlem, Naya sat writing in her journal. She wrote, "They took our seats to protect their comfort. But now the world is rewriting the blueprints, not just for us, but for every kid who sits in a space they were told not to reach, and for every adult who remembered their silence too late. It's not about vengeance, it's about visibility. And now, we're visible." The final page of Raymond's notebook now held 3 words: legacy through clarity. He knew it wasn't over. Reform never was. The system always tried to reclaim itself, but this time, it had been forced to change publicly, which meant the next child to be questioned wouldn't have to answer alone. The system would answer for them. Micah never liked wearing dress shoes. They always pinched his toes and made his walk stiff and weird. But today, he didn't say a word about it. Because today, he and Nia were walking into the White House. The real one. Not the replica at the museum. Not the virtual tour online. The actual place. Naya clutched his hand a little tighter as they passed through the final layer of security. Her breath was caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. Raymond followed behind them, quietly straightening his tie. Not because he needed to impress anyone, but because today he wasn't speaking as an executive. He was speaking as their guardian, and they were about to speak for millions. They were escorted into a medium-sized press room, not too crowded, but the cameras were already rolling. A sign behind the podium read, U.S. Department of Transportation, Ethics and Equity Reform Roundtable. This wasn't just a closed-door meeting anymore. This was public. The moderator introduced them with formal titles, but when Nia stepped up to the microphone, she didn't use one. "Hi," she said plainly, her voice steady. "My name is Nia. I'm 12. My brother Mike is 11, and a few weeks ago we got pulled out of our seats on a flight for no reason except someone didn't think we belonged." Silence in the room. No papers rustling, no coughs, just stillness. "And we didn't yell, we didn't fight, but something happened, something changed, and now grown-ups are listening." Micah stepped up beside her. His voice cracked a little, but he didn't back down. "We didn't know how big this would get. We were just scared at first. But now, we want to make it better. Not just for us, for all kids. So, we made something." He held up a tablet, clicking to a page titled, Skyfair Jr. Passenger Rights for Youth. Raymond watched from the side as his niece and nephew ran through their pitch. Simpler than corporate proposals, but somehow more powerful. Kid-centered safety zones, anonymous feedback tools for kids to report treatment, peer ally training for youth passengers, digital guides in plain language. It was brilliant, not just because of what it said, but who was saying it. By the time the twins sat down, the Secretary of Transportation leaned into the mic and said, "This is why policy must be personal, because systems can't see faces until the faces walk in the room." The roundtable continued with industry leaders, ethics officers, and policymakers all referencing Pierce Protocol 2, a new draft proposal to expand protections to underage and unaccompanied passengers, with funding tied directly to equity compliance. Raymond didn't speak until the end, and when he did, he kept it short. You don't fix a broken window by taping over the glass. You remove what shattered, and you rebuild it to withstand storms. That's what this is, reconstruction, not reaction. The moment went viral. CNN aired a 5-minute feature titled, From Flight 203 to Federal Reform, The Kids Who Grounded an Industry. Telltale's uploaded a 20-minute explainer breaking down every clause of the new passenger equity expansion bill. Within 48 hours, 3 senators co-sponsored it. But the real impact came a week later. It was a Tuesday. Quiet. Nothing special. until a mother in Atlanta posted a 37-second video from inside a plane. Her son, maybe 9 or 10, had just been approached by a flight attendant asking him if he was lost in first class. Before the situation escalated, he calmly pulled up a digital card on his phone. Skyfare ID, passenger code 7A, minor protected by equity mandate. The moment the flight attendant saw it, she apologized and walked away. The post read, "He didn't cry. He didn't panic. He just showed her the card his teacher gave him last week. Thank you, Skyfare. Thank you, Micah and Naya." That post was shared 2.7 million times in 4 days. More teachers started printing the cards. Airlines began incorporating the mandate into their training. The protocol had stopped being policy. It had become culture. Meanwhile, Raymond was working behind the scenes to finalize something even bigger. He was about to launch the Fair Access Index, a real-time public-facing dashboard that allowed anyone to see an airline's treatment scores by demographic segment, age, race, disability, income level, and more. It wasn't optional. It was baked into booking systems. You couldn't buy a ticket without seeing the score. Transparency wasn't a feature anymore. It was the price of business. One evening, while Micah and Nia were doing homework, Raymond walked in with a surprise. A cardboard box. Inside, 2 perfectly tailored flight jackets with Skyfare Ambassador stitched across the left chest. They stared in awe. "For us?" Micah asked. Raymond smiled. "You earned them." The twins wore them the next week on a short regional flight to visit their grandmother. This time, as they entered the cabin, every crew member knew their names. Not because they were famous, because they had changed the rules. When the pilot made his usual welcome announcement, he added, "And we're honored to have Micah and Naya on board today." 2 of the voices who reminded this industry what dignity really looks like. Passengers clapped. The twins blushed. Raymond? He just looked out the window and exhaled. Not relief. Resolution. It started with a ripple. A 1-line update quietly added to the FAA's digital bulletin. Effective immediately, all commercial airlines must comply with the Passenger Equity Certification Standard, or face a temporary suspension of federal air route authorization. No press conference, no warning, just a quiet trigger and a nationwide scramble. Within 72 hours, 5 airlines had their East Coast routes frozen. 124 flights were canceled. $920 million in partnership losses were projected. And the news didn't come from Raymond. It came from the public dashboard. The Fair Access Index, now live, lit up red, signaling non-compliance from major carriers. Investors panicked. Ratings dropped. ESG funds began withdrawing. Airports started cutting code share access. It was no longer a policy suggestion. It was the new operating reality. Raymond stood alone on the top floor of the FAA headquarters that morning, coffee in hand, watching as executives, lawyers, and airline PR teams rotated through security like they were walking into court. But he wasn't there to punish. He was there to finish what began the moment 2 kids were told, "You don't belong here." Downstairs, Nia and Micah sat in the observation lounge, watching the reporters gather outside. "Why do they keep calling it the sky shift?" Micah asked. Naya didn't look up from her tablet. "Because it sounds better than admitting the system was broken this whole time." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I like that it sounds like movement." She smiled. "Exactly." Raymond joined them moments later, his steps quieter than usual. "You 2 ready?" Micah looked up. "You're sure we're not just props today?" Raymond crouched down. "No, son. Today, they're the props. You're the proof." Inside the federal briefing room, cameras were rolling. For once, the nation wasn't watching a politician or a CEO. They were watching 2 kids, sleeves rolled up, eyes wide open, standing in front of a backdrop that read, "Passenger Integrity Charter, Signing Ceremony." This wasn't a law named after a senator. It was a standard shaped by students, ethics officers, and survivors of discrimination. And it had a clause written directly by Nia and Micah. All passengers, regardless of age, race, income, or background, are entitled to travel with dignity, not as a privilege, but as a principle. After the signing, Nia was approached by a woman in her 60s with silver braids and sharp eyes. "I never thought I'd live to see this day," she said softly. Nia blinked. "Were you ever told to leave a seat too?" The woman chuckled. "Baby, I was told not to even enter the terminal." Then she hugged her, not out of pity, but gratitude, not just for Nia, but through her. Later that evening, Raymond stood in front of a quiet camera crew at his home, preparing to record his final remarks before stepping down from his role as interim ethics advisor to the FAA. He looked into the lens and began, "When systems fail, they often do so quietly. Not with shouts, but with looks. Not with laws, but with loopholes. Not with violence, but with subtle, constant denial." What happened to Micah and Nia wasn't an isolated event. It was a familiar one. The kind so many kids, elders, veterans, and marginalized passengers have felt but couldn't name. But now, we've named it. We've measured it, and we've built a framework to end it. The video aired that night on every major network. But the real signal of change didn't come from TV. It came from the boarding gates. 2 weeks later, in Detroit, a flight was boarding. A young black boy in a hoodie stepped into first class with his grandmother. Another passenger, a man in his 50s wearing business attire, glanced over with raised eyebrows. But before he could say anything, the flight attendant smiled and spoke up, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Sanders. Your SkyFare ID has already been verified. You're exactly where you belong." The boy smiled, and the man looked away, not in shame, but in realization. The script had changed. A month later, 3 airports partnered with SkyFare to install passenger dignity displays, digital screens showing the real-time equity scores of every airline boarding at that gate. If a score dipped below threshold, the flight was flagged. Not canceled. Flagged. So passengers knew exactly who they were boarding with. It was quiet accountability. The kind that couldn't be explained away by HR statements or isolated incident tweets. It was data. It was public. It was permanent. Micah and Nia didn't just go back to school. They went back to normal. Sort of. Every now and then, classmates asked questions. Teachers pulled them aside. Sometimes strangers approached them on the street. But mostly, they just got to be kids again. Kids who knew they had changed the airspace above them. Kids who knew that systems, no matter how large, could be bent back toward justice if you held your ground long enough. The final image of the story came one rainy Sunday morning. Raymond was in the kitchen, reading a paper copy of The Atlantic. The cover story read, "When Kids Rewrote the Skies." Micah walked in, hair messy, clutching a bowl of cereal. "Uncle Ray?" "Yeah?" Micah held up the back of the cereal box. It had a cartoon version of him and Nia, next to a QR code labeled, "Learn your rights. Protect your seat. Join the SkyFare generation." Raymond blinked. "That's real?" Micah grinned. "I guess we made it." Raymond nodded, smiling to himself. "You didn't just make it," he said quietly. "You made it matter." The airport looked the same. Same flickering monitors, same tinny announcements echoing off tile walls, same long lines of people trying to get somewhere, anywhere, on time. But Raymond felt it. Something was different now, as he walked through Terminal C. People didn't rush past him like he was invisible. A few nodded. One or two even stopped him quietly to say thank you, not for what he did, but for what they could now do. One gate agent, a Latina woman maybe in her late 30s, leaned in as he passed. "My nephew got to sit in first class last week. No questions, no stares. He said it felt like breathing." Raymond didn't respond right away. He just smiled and kept walking. Micah and Nia were sitting by the window again. this time munching on overpriced pretzels and arguing about who got to sit by the window. "You sat by the window last time," Nia insisted. Micah pointed his pretzel like a pointer. "Yeah, but that was a short flight. Doesn't matter. I negotiated that fair and square." "You bribed me with gummy worms." Raymond cleared his throat with a smirk. "We good here, or should I call the FAA?" Both kids groaned in unison. Peace was restored. This was the first flight they were taking just for fun. No speeches, no press, no advisory boards or roundtables or televised signings. Just a family trip to visit their grandmother. Something normal, something earned. As they boarded, the flight attendant glanced at the manifest, then looked up, recognition dawning in her eyes. "Oh, welcome back, Nia and Micah. Your seats are ready. No extra tone, no performative overkindness. Just respect, like it should have always been." In first class, a man in his mid-40s glanced over and did a double take, then looked away quickly, like maybe he'd seen a headline once and wasn't sure if he should say something. He didn't, and that was fine. They weren't here to be seen, they were here to fly. As the plane began to taxi, Nia reached into her bag and pulled out a well-worn Skyfair pamphlet. Not because she needed it, but because it comforted her, like an old bookmark in a favorite novel. Micah leaned over. "You know we don't have to carry that anymore, right?" "I know," she said quietly, "but it reminds me." "Of what?" She looked out the window as the plane lifted off. "That we belong, even when people forget." Micah was silent for a while, then he nodded. "Yeah, same." Raymond, seated behind them, watched as the clouds rolled in and the world below got smaller. He let out a breath he hadn't even realized he was holding, the kind that had built up over years, over policies and systems and moments when silence was safer than standing up. He thought about all the passengers who'd been told to sit back down, to not make trouble, to not escalate, to not imagine more. And now, here he was, watching two children fly not just above the clouds, but above the noise. Halfway through the flight, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have some very special passengers on board today. Two young travelers who helped all of us in the aviation industry look inward and fly fairer." Scattered applause filled the cabin. Not loud, not rehearsed, but real. Micah covered his face, pretending to groan. "Uncle Ray, you told them?" Raymond raised a brow. "I said nothing. Captain's got his own sources." Nia leaned over. "He's blushing. Everyone look. Shh." Later, as the cabin dimmed and the plane soared quietly through late afternoon light, Raymond looked at his niece and nephew, heads tilted, eyes closed, finally resting. He thought about how many people had played a part in this shift. The quiet ones, the brave ones, the ones who filed complaints that never got answered, who wrote letters that never got published. Every one of them had cracked the dam just a little more, until one day, it broke open, and two kids flew through it. The descent began, and the view outside turned golden. The skyline of their grandmother's town came into focus, familiar, safe. As the wheels touched down, Raymond thought to himself, "We didn't just land, we arrived." The porch swing creaked gently as Nia leaned back, her braids brushing the shoulder of her sweatshirt. The sun had just started to dip behind the line of oak trees behind Grandma Lottie's house, casting long shadows across the overgrown garden and the cracked brick steps. Fireflies blinked lazily in the warm evening air. Somewhere nearby, someone was grilling, and the smell of charcoal and sweet sauce floated on the wind. Micah sat next to her, knees pulled to his chest, earbuds in one ear, but the music wasn't playing. Just habit. Raymond stood a few feet away, still sipping his sweet tea from a chipped glass, the ice long gone. It had been 3 days since they'd landed. 3 days of home-cooked meals, of front-yard football with neighborhood cousins, of hugs from people who didn't say much but looked at the twins like they were made of something bigger than bone, like they were hope. You ever think, Micah said suddenly. That maybe none of this would have happened if that man never complained? Raymond looked up from his glass. What do you mean? I mean, it's messed up, yeah. But if he hadn't spoken up, none of this would have unraveled. No Skyfair, no hearings, no ethics scores, no charter. Naya nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the dusky horizon. One man's hate exposed a whole system. Exactly, Micah said. It's like he thought he was pushing us down, but he lit the match. Raymond smiled, but it was the kind of smile that had been earned, worn in, like an old jacket. That's how change starts, he said quietly. Not with permission, but with pressure. They sat in silence for a while after that, letting the sounds of summer wrap around them. Crickets, a car horn in the distance, laughter from 2 doors down. It all felt normal, and that, more than anything, felt like victory. Inside the house, Grandma Lottie was watching the local news on low volume. She'd recorded the national special on Micah and Naya, even though she didn't trust those big stations. She kept pausing the clip every time their faces came up on screen, her voice whispering things like, "That's my baby," and "Look at her, standing taller than Congress." She didn't need to say more. She had lived enough lifetimes to know what this meant, not just for the kids, but for all the ones who came before them. All the times someone had said, "You don't belong here," and no one had pushed back. Until now. Later that night, Raymond tucked a blanket over Naya as she drifted off on the couch, one hand still gripping the corner of a Skyfair brochure she didn't even realize she'd been holding in her sleep. He paused, looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, more to himself than to her, "You didn't just belong there. You redefined what belonging means." The next morning, a letter arrived at Raymond's home address. It had no return label, just a stamped seal in the corner, one he hadn't seen in years. It was from the Department of Transportation. Inside, a personal note from the secretary, thanking him for initiating the most comprehensive ethics transformation in modern air travel. And at the bottom, a formal offer. "We'd like you to serve as permanent chair of the Passenger Equity Council, leading the next phase of national implementation." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer. Some answers need time. That night, as he looked out at the stars from Grandma Lottie's porch, Raymond thought not about power or policy, but about a question Naya had once asked him weeks ago when the whole storm began. "Uncle Ray, when will they stop looking at us like we don't belong?" And now he had a new answer. When we stop waiting for their permission and start building our own sky. Have you ever witnessed or experienced something unfair in a place where everyone should be treated equally, like on a plane, in a waiting room, or a classroom? Tell us where you're watching from, and what belonging means to you today, because sometimes the quietest passengers change the system the loudest.